Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. It's January 4th, 2022, and we're studying from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, Chapter 1. And let's read text 42. Text 42 of Chapter 1. Okay? We're going to do that. We're going to do that. What's that? Are you recording? It is recording, yes. Text 42 of Chapter 1, Madhya Lila. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda. Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodital Gododaya Pushpavantal Chitra Sandal Tamo Nudal. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda, who are just like the sun and the moon. They have arisen simultaneously on the horizon of Gauda to dissipate the darkness of ignorance in this age of Kali and to wonderfully bestow benediction upon all. Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupasrupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. Okay. All right. So today's the anniversary of the disappearance day of Srila Jiva Goswami. So we okay, let's do another invocation verse for whoever wants to listen or join in. This is from the Sad Goswami Astakam. Nana Shastra Vicharane Kanipuna Sadharma Samstapaka Lokanam Hitakarina Tribhubane Manyal Saranyakaram Radha Krishna Padaravinda Bhajanan Andena Makalika Bande Rupa Sanatana Raghu Yoga Sri Jiva Gopalaka Bande Rupa Sanatana Raghu Yoga Sri Jiva Gopalaka. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, namely Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatt Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Gopal Bhatt Goswami, and Sri Jiva Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for all human beings. Thus, they are honored all over the 3 worlds and are worth to take shelter of because they are absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are fully engaged in the service of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. Okay, so today is the disappearance day of Srila Jiva Goswami. So he's one of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. On our altars, you see six Vaishnavas in loincloths and like that, and looking just very austere, humble, and like really happy. So that's the 6 Goswamis, and each one of them has this amazing story around them. And so Srila Jiva Goswami, he's the nephew of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, they're the elder Goswamis of the six. And they had another brother named Anupama or Balaba, and he had a son named Jiva Goswami. When Rupa and Sanatan Goswami passed away, Jiva Goswami, he was clearly revealed as the worldwide leader of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. This is about 500 years ago. Srila Jiva Goswami, he established a temple in Vrindavan, and the deities there are Radha Damodar, the Radha Damodar temple. So, and for us as followers of Srila Prabhupada, the Radha Damodar temple it's especially relevant. Before Srila Prabhupada embarked on the Jaladuta ship and came to the United States, Srila Prabhupada was residing in Vrindavan for several years, from 1962 to 1965, at the Radha Damodar temple, constructed, inspired by Srila Jiva Goswami. And okay, so Srila Jiva Goswami has unlimited transcendental attributes. Certainly amongst them is that Prabhupada referred to him as the greatest philosopher on the planet. So this is a heavyweight personality. The greatest philosopher in the world, Prabhupada would clearly say. Jiva Goswami composed so many transcendental philosophical literatures, very profound. And he composed a grammar. He composed, those who learn Sanskrit still learn from the Sanskrit grammar, compiled by Srila Jiva Goswami. And his grammar book, whatever you're learning about grammar, he always integrates Krishna into the lessons. So it's a special grammar book, a grammar teaching lessons. There's a lot to say about Srila Jiva Goswami. Prabhupada quotes profusely from Srila Jiva Goswami, profusely, as a general principle. So Srila Jiva Goswami, he's a previous acharya in our line. And as a general principle, we understand and approach previous acharyas through our current link to the parampara. Parampara means chain of pure spiritual teachers, starting from Krishna. So we understand Jiva Goswami and Sanatan Goswami and Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur and Srila Bhakti Siddhanta and Vyasadeva, and we understand the previous acharyas through our current link, Srila Prabhupada. And really, even without separate endeavor, just by reading all of Prabhupada's books, we get a lot from Jiva. We get a lot about Jiva Goswami, about his teachings and his life. Still, on special days like the appearance and disappearance days, then it can be like a special time to hear it from and about Jiva Goswami from Srila Prabhupada. It's kind of a Chintya Beta Beta Tattva, which means simultaneously one and different, meaning that we know Srila Prabhupada, we know Srila Jiva Goswami through Srila Prabhupada, and at the same time by going through Srila Prabhupada, we develop a direct relationship with Jiva Goswami. Same like that, like that. Just like we approach Krishna through Srila Prabhupada's guidance, and by doing that, we develop our direct relationship with Krishna. Okay. Well, I want to develop my direct relationship with Jiva Goswami, and Krishna, and Srimati Radharani without the link, just me and Krishna, me and Jiva Goswami. Then we'll be blocked because that's not the parampara system. The basic example given is like, I can say, I want a direct relationship with the print on this book. I don't want to go through these glasses. No, I went direct. No, actually, it's all blurry. Actually, each year it's blurrier and blurrier. How does that happen? Anyhow, so the philosophical point here. So I want to direct relate. No, I'm not getting anything, like nothing. Okay, but in a sense, we can say these glasses are in the way between my eyes and the book. Well, in a sense, that's true, but actually, these finely crafted glasses enhance my direct relationship with the print on the book and the meaning there. So similarly, we go through the finely crafted pure devotees in the parampara system that Krishna established, and then that enhances our direct relationship with all members of our disciplic succession, including Srila Jiva Goswami. So Prabhupada references Jiva Goswami a lot. Prabhupada references Jiva Goswami establishes that, well, the principle of achintya. Achintya means inconceivable. So now inconceivable doesn't mean you can't understand it. That's not what it means. Achintya means yes, with our present mind, with our material mind and senses, we're not able to conceive. But there is another epistemology, another way of knowing through which we can have absolute knowledge revealed. So Jiva Goswami established to begin to understand something about God, about the absolute, we need to first accept foundationally that God is inconceivable. Then we can surrender the attempts to try to put the absolute in the box of my material condition, mind, and intelligence. And then I can approach through another epistemology, another way of knowing, and that's called bhakti. Through personal, loving, devotional service, then the supreme absolute personality of Godhead reveals himself in our hearts. Okay, and that requires humility to not be proud of my material mind and intellect. So let's read a little bit something about Srila Jiva Goswami and his teachings. Text 42, chapter 1, Madhya Lila. Tanra Bratuputra Nama Sri Jiva Goswami Yata Bhakti Granta Koila Tara Anta Nai Tanra Bratush Putra Nama Sri Jiva Goswami Yata Bhakti Granta Koila Tara Anta Nai Tanra Bratu Putra Nama Sri Jiva Goswami Yata Bhakti Granta Koila Tara Antanai Tanra Bratush Putra Nama Sri Jiva Goswami Yata Bhakti Granta Koila Tara Antanai Tanra Bratush Putra Nama Sri Jiva Goswami Yata Bhakti Granta Koila Tara Antanai Tanra Bratush Putra Nama Sri Jiva Goswami Yata Bhakti Granta Koila Tara Antanai. Would anyone online like to chant the verse? If not, we'll go to the word for word. Tanra is Bratuputra, nephew, Nama, of the name, Sri Jiva Goswami, Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhupada, Yata, Bhakti Granta, books on devotional service. Koila compiled. Tara, that. Anta, end. Nai, there is not. Okay. Translation. Sri Rupa Goswami's nephew, Srila Jiva Goswami, has compiled so many books on devotional service that there is no counting. I'm going to go to text 43. Sri Bhagavata Sandarbha Namagranta Vistara Bhakti Siddhantara Tate Dekaya Chena Para. In Sri Bhagavat Sandarbha, Srila Jiva Goswami has written conclusively about the ultimate end of devotional service. And we'll read it. It's a long purport by Srila Prabhupada. We'll read at least some of it. Okay. Bhagavat Sandarbha is also known as Sat Sandarbha. Okay. I'll give a few comments. Om Gyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitamnina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So as we just heard, Jiva Goswami, he wrote, compiled. We can say write, but if we think in terms of like just an or author writing a book, this let's call it, this is transpersonal authorship. Transpersonal authorship, right? That you get like transpersonal psychology, that sort of thing. So this is transpersonal authorship. This morning before Japa period, we read a verse. Krishna Varnam Trisha Krishnam Sango Pangasta Parshanam Yage Sankirtana Prayer Yajanti Sumedasa. So that's a verse from the Bhagavatam from 5,000 years ago that predicts the appearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about 500 years ago, that Krishna will appear in a yellowish form accompanied by his associates, and he'll spread Sankirtan, the chanting of the names of God. So these 6 Sandarbhas from Jiva Goswami, these are, he has so many works, and this is like his main works. Sandarbha means a tapestry. Sandarbha means like you weave together. You weave together all the themes and principles. Sandarbha actually means tapestry. Okay, so the very first verse of this epic, each of the 6 Sandarbhas are epic. So the very first verse of the first one, called the Tattva Sandarbha, is this verse. That's his first invocation verse. Krishna Varnam Tisha Krishnam Sango Pangasta Parshadam. So so it means like, so same with Srila Prabhupada at the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. He starts his Mangala Charana. Om Gyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. My spiritual master opened my eyes, born into the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge of my respectful obeisances unto. So this Mangala Charana, it's like the authors are invoking the presence of Krishna and Srimati Radharani and all of the pure Vaishnava Acharyas. So in a sense, so that they authored the book. That Krishna, sometimes Prabhupada would say, I did not write these books, Krishna wrote them. Okay, so he's simply an instrument. So it's not like books in the ordinary, this is revealed absolute knowledge. Each syllable reveals absolute truth, and each syllable is non-different from the truth it reveals. So it's not an ordinary book. Okay, so actually, it's described that these Sandarbhas were originally compiled in a loose form by Gopal Bhatt Goswami. And then Jiva Goswami put them together in a very concise, organized form. And the 6 books were originally called Bhagavat Sandarbha. And then, I'm not recalling exactly how it unfolded, but then they became known as Sat Sandarbha, which means Sat means 6. And the second book is called Bhagavat Sandarbha. Okay, so we'll hear from Srila Prabhupada about that. In the first part called Tattva Sandarbha, it is proved that Srimad Bhagavatam is the most authoritative evidence directly pointing to the absolute truth. Okay, I'll just pause there. So to know something, we need a proper means to know it. We need a proper means to know it, right? Like if we want to know the temperature and we have a radio, not going to work, right? No, you need a thermometer. Okay, like that. Okay, radio can hook into frequencies, sound frequencies, but okay. So so Jiva Goswami starts with epistemology. That's why it's kind of, maybe some of us were like, Jiva Goswami, who's he? Never heard of him. So in a sense, the theme of today's class is Jiva Goswami is the sort of person we want to know about. We can think of so many personalities we know a lot about. And are they going to give us the epistemology through which we can realize the absolute truth? Are they going to give us Sambandha Abhideya Prayojana? Okay. Probably not. Like if we go on the internet and just sample a few of the thousands of personalities. Okay, so whatever are the personalities, politics, sports, entertainment, etc., or even in the intellectual world. So Jiva Goswami starts the Sandarbhas with epistemology. What's the most? Yeah, how can we know? How can we know the absolute truth? And he comes to the Vedas and the Srimad Bhagavatam, and then the Sandarbhas are about, okay, so what is it to be known? And there are three general categories: Sambandha, who are we, and what's our relationship with the absolute? What's the nature of the absolute? And ultimately the personal nature. What's the process to know, Abhideya? And what are the fruits? The fruits, ecstatic love of God. So the Sandarbhas go into all of that. The second Sandarbha, called Bhagavat Sandarbha, draws a distinction between impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma, and describes the spiritual world and the domination of the mode of goodness, devoid of contamination by the other two material modes. In other words, there is a vivid description of the transcendental position known as Shuddha Sattva. Material goodness is apt to be contaminated by the other two material qualities, ignorance and passion. But when one is situated in the Shuddha Sattva position, there is no chance for such contamination. It is a spiritual platform of pure goodness. The potency of the Supreme Lord in the living entity is also described, and there is a description of the inconceivable energies and varieties of energies of the Lord. The potencies are divided into categories: internal, external, personal, marginal, and so forth. There are also discussions of the eternality of deity worship, the omnipotence of the deity, his all-pervasiveness, his giving shelter to everyone, his subtle and gross potencies, his personal manifestations, his expressions of form, quality, and pastimes, his transcendental position and his complete form. It is also stated that everything pertaining to the absolute has the same potency, and that the spiritual world, the associates in the spiritual world, and the threefold energies of the Lord in the spiritual world are all transcendental. There are further discussions concerning the difference between the impersonal Brahman and the personality of Godhead, the fullness of the personality of Godhead, the objective of all Vedic knowledge, the personal potencies of the Lord, and the personality of Godhead as the original author of Vedic knowledge. The third Sandarbha is called Paramatma Sandarbha, and in this book, there is a description of Paramatma, the supersoul, and an explanation of how the supersoul exists in millions and millions of living entities. There are discussions of the differences between the qualitative incarnations and discourses concerning the living entities, Maya, the material world, the theory of transformation, the illusory energy, the sameness of this world and the supersoul, and the truth about this material world. In this connection, the opinions of Sridhar Swami are given. It is stated that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although devoid of material qualities, superintends all material activities. There is also a discussion of how the Leela avatar incarnations respond to the desires of the devotees and how the Supreme Personality of Godhead is characterized by 6 opulences. The 4th Sandarbha is called the Krishna Sandarbha, and in this book, Krishna is proved to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are discussions of Krishna's pastimes and qualities, his superintendence of the Purusha avatars, and so forth. The opinions of Sridhar Swami are corroborated. In each and every scripture, the supremacy of Krishna is stressed. Baladev, Sankarshan, and other expansions of Krishna are emanations of Maha Sankarshan. All the incarnations and expansions exist simultaneously in the body of Krishna, who is described as two-handed. There are also descriptions of the Goloka planet, Vrindavan, the eternal place of Krishna, the identity of Goloka and Vrindavan, the Yadavas and the cowherd boys, both eternal associates of Krishna, the adjustment and equality of the manifest and unmanifest pastimes, Sri Krishna's manifestation in Gokula, the queens of Dwarka as expansions of the eternal internal potency, and superior to them, the super excellent gopis. There is also a list of the gopis' names and a discussion of the topmost position of Srimati Radharani. The 5th Sandarbha is called Bhakti Sandarbha. And in this book, there is a discussion of how devotional service can be directly executed and how such service can be adjusted either directly or indirectly. I'll just pause for a second. So the Tattva Sandarbha, Bhagavat Sandarbha, Paramatma Sandarbha, and Krishna Sandarbha, they deal for the most part with Sambandha, the positions of all the different entities of the spirit soul of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the position of the material energy. Okay, so that's Sambandha, knowing who we are and our essential connection. Jidara Swarupahoi Krishnara Nityadas Krishnara Tatasta Shakti Beta Beta Prakash as servants of Krishna. Then the Bhakti Sandarbha, that focuses on Abhideya. Here's the process to realize, to joyfully realize our position as not matter, as spirit, and as eternal servants of Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. That's Bhakti. And then the 6th Sandarbha, Priti Sandarbha, that deals with prayojana, the fruits. Okay, when we engage in bhakti, the fruits of the ecstatic, loving experience of the spirit soul in service to Krishna. Okay, the 5th Sandarbha is called Bhakti Sandarbha, and in this book there is a discussion of how devotional service can be directly executed and how such service can be adjusted either directly or indirectly. There is a discussion of the knowledge of all kinds of scripture, the establishment of the Vedic institution of Varnashram, bhakti as superior to fruitive activity, and so forth. It is also stated that without devotional service, even a Brahmin is condemned. There are discussions of the process of karma tyaga, the giving of the results of karma to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the practices of mystic yoga and philosophical speculation, which are deprecated as simply hard labor. Worship of the demigods is discouraged, and worship of a Vaishnava is considered exalted. No respect is given to the non-devotees. There are discussions of how one can be liberated even in this life, Jivan Mukta, Lord Shiva as a devotee, and how a bhakta and his devotional service are eternally existing. It is stated that through bhakti, one can attain all success, for bhakti is transcendental to the material qualities. There is a discussion of how the self is manifest through bhakti. There is also a discussion of the self's bliss, as well as how bhakti, even imperfectly executed, enables one to attain the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unmotivated devotional service is highly praised, and an explanation is given of how each devotee can achieve the platform of unmotivated service by association with other devotees. There is a discussion of the differences between the Mahabhagavat and the ordinary devotee, the symptoms of philosophical speculation, the symptoms of self-worship or Hangrahupasana, the symptoms of devotional service, the symptoms of imaginary perfection, the acceptance of regulative principles, service to the spiritual master, the Mahabhagavat, liberated devotee, and service to him, service to Vaishnavas in general, the principles of hearing, chanting, remembering, and serving the lotus feet of the Lord, offenses in worship, offensive effects, prayers, engaging oneself as an eternal servant of the Lord, making friendships with the Lord, and surrendering everything for his pleasure. There is also discussion of Raganuga Bhakti, spontaneous love of Godhead, of the specific purpose of becoming a devotee of Lord Krishna, and a comparative study of other perfectional stages. The sixth Sandarbha is called Priti Sandarbha, a thesis. Priti Sandarbha, a thesis on love of Godhead. Here it is stated that through love of Godhead, one becomes perfectly liberated and attains the highest goal of life. A distinction is made between the liberated condition of a personalist and that of an impersonalist, and there is a discussion of liberation during one's lifetime as distinguished from liberation from material bondage. Of all kinds of liberation, liberation in loving service to the Lord is described as the most exalted, and meeting the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face is shown to be the highest perfection of life. Immediate liberation is contrasted with liberation by a gradual process. Both realization of Brahman and meeting with the Supreme Personality of Godhead are described as liberation within one's lifetime. But meeting with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, both internally and externally, is shown to be super excellent above the transcendental realization of the Brahman effulgence. There is a comparative study of liberation as Salokya, Samipya, and Sarupya. Samipya is better than Salokya. Devotional service is considered to be liberation with greater facilities, and there is a discussion of how to obtain it. There are also discussions of the transcendental state one achieves after attaining the devotional platform, which is the exact position of love of Godhead. The marginal symptoms of transcendental love and how it is awakened, the distinction between so-called love and transcendental love on the platform of love of Godhead, and the different types of humors and mellows enjoyed in relishing the lusty affairs of the gopis, which are different from mundane affairs, which in turn are symbolic representations of pure love for Krishna. There are also discussions of bhakti mixed with philosophical speculation, the super excellence of the love of the gopis, the difference between opulent devotional service and loving devotional service, the exalted position of the residents of Gokula, the progressively exalted position of the friends of Krishna, the Gopas and the Gopis in parental love with Krishna, and finally the super excellence of the love of the Gopis and that of Srimati Radharani. There is also a discussion of how spiritual feelings can be present when one simply imitates them, and of how such mellows are far superior to the ordinary mellows of mundane love. And there are descriptions of different ecstasies, the awakening of ecstasy, transcendental qualities, the distinction of Dhirodhata, the utmost attractiveness of conjugal love, the ecstatic features, the permanent ecstatic features, the mellows divided in 5 transcendental features of direct loving service, and indirect loving service considered in 7 divisions. Finally, there is a discussion of overlapping of different rasas, and there are discussions of shanta, neutrality, servitorship, taking shelter, parental love, conjugal love, direct transcendental enjoyment, and enjoyment in separation, previous attraction, and the glories of Srimati Radharani. Hare Krishna. Yes. Let's say he knows, and from a scholarly point of view, and he's realized in the Sandarbhas, yes. But Prabhupada is Bhakti Vedanta. Vedanta means scholarship of the Vedas and the conclusion of the Vedas. And Bhakti is with full devotion. And so, okay, so these Sandarbhas, the next verse talks about another book by Jiva Goswami, Gopal Champu. Gopal is Champu. I'm pretty sure the English word champion comes from Champu in Sanskrit. Krishna, the champion, like that. Okay, but here we read about the really there are 7 Sandarbhas, because there's 7th, the Krama Sandarbha, which is Jiva Goswami's systematic commentary on the Bhagavatam, just like Prabhupada gave us Bhagavatam commentary in 30 volumes. That's Krama Sandarbha from Jiva Goswami. He commentated starting with 111. Then the 6 Sandarbhas that we usually speak of, that's like Tattva Sandarbha, it's like, okay, like Krishna Sandarbha establishes Krishna as Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Jiva Goswami will take references from all 12 cantos to establish that tattva, that principle. Bhakti as the supermost process for spiritual life. That's a Bhakti Sandarbha. So Jiva Goswami takes references from all the Bhagavatam. So the 6 Sandarbhas, they're a commentary on the Bhagavatam, essentially. So many places we can go. I thought, and I could, talk about, what we hear from Srila Prabhupada about Srila Jiva Goswami. It's unlimited. Jiva Goswami's life, pastimes, teachings. But I think I'll pause here. If anyone, wants to share any comments or ask any particular questions or suggest a direction for the next, part of our class discussion and experience today at this time. Any questions or comments? If there, like the parts, it gets esoteric. Parts of it get esoteric. So like Anandini.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for choosing this topic.
Sure.
I once heard that the Inuits, like the Eskimos, I don't think that's a politically correct word now. The Inuits, they have like 22 or 55, I don't know the number, names for snow.
Right.
And here I get there are I don't know how many distinctions in spiritual like qualities, and love of God has different qualities and stages, and just it's amazing. And I was wondering, do I need to know all these in order to go back to God, or can I skip all that knowledge? So that's a question that came up for me, and I just feel very inspired by just hearing that deity worship, for example, that this is eternal.
Yeah.
And that it's, even though like now in Kali Yuga, where I understand deity worship is not the main path back to God, still it's here and it's valid and it's important, and because it is eternal.
Yes.
And you asked for a direction to go. Could you speak about the supremacy of Srimati Radharani?
Could you say that again? Speak about.
I was going to ask you to speak about the supremacy of Srimati Radharani.
The supreme position of Srimati Radharani?
Yes.
Uh-huh. All right. Thank you, Anandini, for your sharing realizations, inspirations, questions, comments. There's a lot there. Yeah, there's a lot in this purport. And so, yes. So I like the point you made about the Inuits. Okay, yeah, maybe they have dozens of words for snow. I thought, well, it's snow. Okay, so each language, right? Just like, okay, so so in English, maybe there's so many words for different parts of a car. Okay. Pra wrote, practical question, is it a recommended fast today? Well, my understanding is Prabhupada did not put this day as a particular half-day fast. Okay. In general, he didn't like specifically put the appearance and disappearance days of the Goswamis on the calendar. At the same time, he said, like, you know, in addition to the 18 or so Vaishnav holidays he put on the calendar, he said, I could give you more. I could give you dozens and dozens more, like, you know, 3 per week. And so it's, my understanding is it's not a day that's Prabhupada specifically say recommended fast. At the same time, if we want to perform some austerity and do a half-day fast in order to increase our hearing about Jiva Goswami and our increased number of rounds, that's certainly a wonderful thing to do with human form of life. I'm not planning to do a fast today like that. So like appearance and disappearance day of Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta, that is recommended half-day fast. So yeah, like maybe in English, there are, we don't whatever hundreds of names of parts of cars or parts of computers, okay? Because like that's what's really important. We want to know all the nuances, okay? So, so in Sanskrit, yeah, so many about so many nuanced ways to describe the subtleties and the nuances of spiritual feeling. And that's what you're picking up on Nandini. That's true. There are some places like in Nectar of Devotion, like, you know, Prabhupada's empowered to give these Sanskrit and Bengali literatures in English. There are a few places where there's some particular descriptions of some very tender spiritual feelings. And Prabhupada will just write, there is no translation in English, and just goes on. It's like, no, we just can't do it in English like that. So thanks for that, indeed. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Women group, and it was about that. We were looking at Christianity in Christ.
Yeah.
And at the end of the conversation, Vesa was realizing, oh yes, Christianity gives God.
Yeah.
But kind of vague.
Right.
And then she understood that what we get with Bhagavad Gita and of course the rest, Bhagavad Gita and the rest of Veda, is more and more distinction.
Or distinction. Yeah.
Detailed knowledge. And we also get analogy of like, let's say I want to go to Russia.
Yeah.
I can't just, I go to Russia.
Yeah.
But I can end up in slum.
Right.
I can end up in a place where, you know, like, people are doing things that I'm not interested in.
Yeah.
That has no match with me.
Yeah.
Or I can end up in Siberia, in a cold of Siberia where there is nothing. However, if I study very carefully Russia, then I can organize a trip with very precise destination and precise activities and precise knowledge of the people there.
Yeah.
That will make a difference for me. So that's what you know, like the person was asking the question, she had all those realizations, which was very beautiful. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Melanie. Yeah, we got some message that some dudes, their speakers weren't hearing you so well. I'm going to rephrase it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so mine was talking about in the Vaishnavi Bhagavad Gita reading yesterday. One of the participants got some realization, like, okay, Bible, Christianity talk about God, and okay, that's the absolute. It's wonderful, but it's somewhat vague. And whereas here in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, we're getting like detailed distinctions, and the analogy was there. If someone's go to Russia, Russia, okay, well, you might end up in the slums, you might end up in some association in Russia where you're not really interested in these things. But then if you have a travel brochure and you have someone who's expert in Russia, okay, and here in Russia, you can go here and there's this city and this village and these activities, here's the different distinctive possibilities. Right, so So in Jiva Goswami's Bhagavat Sandarbha, he starts with the verse, because it's all Bhagavatam. He starts with the verse, Vedanti tat tatva vidas tatva myaj ganamadvayam brahmeti Bhagavat. Bhagavat meti Bhagavaniti Shabdyate, that there are three aspects of realization of the absolute. And it's all the same absolute, it's non-dual. Okay. So there's the impersonal Brahma Jyoti. Prabhupada compares that to like, if there's a town on the top of a hill and we're approaching it from a distance. We're approaching it from the distance. And we see, well, it's kind of like a cloudy blur. Right? Then we get closer and we can say, no, it's not a cloudy blur. Actually, there's a tower and there's the municipality and there's some sports fields. Then we actually get close. When we get really close, right there, oh, okay, and here's Betty Jones, and here's Ted Smith, and here's okay, we get all the detail. Now the town is never a blur, right? So the absolute is never a blur, but we, according to our closeness, we perceive it in different ways. We perceive it in different ways. An example I've given over the years, just a similar example, just like someone with not much music appreciation, like me, for example, might hear maybe a symphony orchestra concert, maybe playing a Mozart symphony. And maybe I'll sit there and I might say, I liked it, the music is good. Okay. And then you say, oh, what did you like about it? And I'll say, it was good. That's all David Wolf can do. Now, let's say with someone with rich appreciation of music, the history, the notes, then we go, oh, yes, the way the violins blended with the percussions and the three-part harmony, and then this melody started, and then I was moved in this way and that way. So it's the same symphony, but one has more appreciation of the detail. So that's the bhakti, the personality of Godhead, brings us to appreciation of the nuance of the supreme personality of Godhead. So yeah, so Sanskrit has so much a language to appreciate all that subtlety. And then it's not about, do I have to know anything? That, okay, so to go back to Godhead, and going back to Godhead, as the Goswamis described, we can be back to Godhead in this very body. It's not a thing of, be good, die, and go to heaven. Ihayasya harer-dasya karmana manasa gira nikilas bhakti vasta sujivan mukta saujite. We're absorbed in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and that's liberation in this very body, right? Now when we leave this body, to not be forced to take birth again, that means to be steadily fixed in that liberated bhakti platform. So one who's enthusiastic for bhakti, it's not like you have to know anything to go back to Godhead, right? Bhakti is not dependent on any particular knowledge. And one who's enthusiastic to serve Srila Prabhupada, our current link to Krishna, one who's enthusiastic to engage in bhakti is naturally inspired to know about Jiva Goswami and his teachings. It's not about, I have to have some external memory knowledge, but one who's enthused and inspired to engage in bhakti, then naturally, I want to fill my mind and heart with more and more of the information and the knowledge about this philosophy. So it comes from inspiration. Okay, yeah, it comes from, it's a get to. It's from inspiration, and like that. So it's not a have to. And okay, then yeah, and then the part about deity worship being eternal. Yeah, and so deity worship, Sankirtan is the Yuga Dharma, that's chanting and hearing. That's the same time Prabhupada, following Jiva Goswami, recommends deity worship. Last night with Bhakta Nico, I instructed Nico in the totality of the deity worship that I do. Took about 3 minutes. It was complete. At one point, Prabhupada was showing deity. He was showing deity worship, and basically very, very simple. And then as years went on, he expanded it. And at one point he said, if I told you everything, you would faint. Okay, so we could expand unlimitedly, but again, he doesn't want us to get this rule, that way, this way. So and three minutes in my home is an increase compared to what it was a few years ago. So I'm actually feeling quite proud. Yeah, so the idea is the Prabhupada instituted some deity worship according to our level, to keep us pure, into it, because it requires some purity of mind, some regulation, cleanliness, like that. So it's so helpful for purity. And Anandini also asked about Srimati Radharani. Ladini has your hand up.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I appreciate your superhuman power to explain deity worship in 3 minutes, Dhira Govinda. And yeah, you are proud of it, superhuman. And so actually yesterday I went to my friend for Sangha meeting, and we had similar discussion about like what one has to learn to go back to Godhead. It started with like there was a person and he had a first initiation and now his guru died. I'm quoting. And so he doesn't have second initiation and he's wondering whether he can like go back to Godhead without second initiation. So it turned out to be like an interesting Guru Tattva discussion, but also like, why am I raising it up now? Like what struck me at the conversation yesterday was like, no matter what we learn, it's no guarantee anyway that we go back to Krishna. But then I was thinking, like Haridas Thakur, did he have Gayatri? Like we couldn't, like nobody knew that. But I'm curious about it because he didn't even want to go to Jagannath temple not to offend the Lord. So I don't imagine that he would like have like the Brahminical, or at least that's my understanding, that's a Brahminical mantra. So yeah, that's what I'm curious. Like there is stories of people who are like this person who cannot even read, but so obviously he doesn't learn much Shastra, but Lord Chaitanya doesn't consider it a problem. So.
Well, thanks, Ladini. Thanks for sharing your personal contact with this devotee Prabhu there. And so basically, back to Godhead, that's a state of consciousness. It's not dependent on whether I got this formal initiation or that formal initiation. It's a state of consciousness where all I want is to serve Krishna. Really, even more. Janme Prabhu said, all I want is to serve Prabhupada's mission, birth after birth. Then with that attitude, then we become very dear to Krishna. And that's it. It's not dependent on anything external. At the same time, the different things like the formal initiations, they support us to cultivate that internal consciousness. Whether reading this purport, in one sense, it's not correct to say like to read this purport is external, because this is all the internal energy. But whatever activities we do, if we learn about, all these terms like that, that's meant to move us to clear the foreign, the things that cover the soul, to move all the anarthas, all the greed, lust, nonsense, laziness, envy, to remove all that and return us to the original consciousness of loving Krishna. So the externals in themselves are not required. As far as your question about Haridas Thakur, I don't have information about whether he ever received formal second initiation. We could look at the different pictures of Haridas Thakur authorized by Srila Prabhupada to see if there's a Brahmin thread on any of them. And there you go. Okay, no Brahmin thread. Okay. Yeah. That Morti of Haridas Thakur. So, as far as your friend, I'm glad he's encountered you, Ladini Shakti, and you're encouraging him to connect with Prabhupada as his current link to the Parampara. And as far as formal second initiation, that's a detail. It could be there or not. But, right.
Can you please turn it back to yourself, Dhira Govinda Prabhu? I don't hear you well when it's not.
Yeah, I'm glad this devotee has encountered you. I'm sure you're inspiring him or encouraging him to connect with Prabhupada as his current link to the Parampara, to hear from Prabhupada. And as far as formal second initiation or not, that's a detail. That's a detail. I mean, Prabhupada instituted formal first and second initiation. So it's part of Prabhupada's program. It's not like an essential part, but it's completely transcendental, inspiring when done properly according to the guidelines that Prabhupada gave us. As far as like, I took first initiation from this. It sounds like it's possible. He has some maybe institutional conditioning and maybe some misconceptions. So Prabhupada sent him to you. Malini.
I will speak loud enough. A distinction that seems important to make is that one process of devotional service is hearing. And we have a conditioning in Madhya. Our Madhya conditioning is learning.
Yeah.
So we learn from book, we learn mathematics, we learn English, we learn all those things.
Yeah.
And that has nothing to do with the process of devotional service called hearing.
Hearing, true.
So we want to hear from Jiva Gosvami, we want to hear from Srila Prabhupada mainly, and then Srila Prabhupada, we want to hear him giving us Srila Jiva Goswami. And then that's different than learning. Yeah. And then whatever we need to know as we practice devotional service, the 9 process, starting with hearing and chanting, it's going to be revealed. Because even Gaurkeshwar Das Babaji is described as illiterate. Yeah. He has the same knowledge that Jiva Goswami has. Yeah. There's nothing missing. Yeah. And not because he learned it from books. It's because as we progress in devotional life, and he was hearing from Bhaktivinoda Thakur a lot. As we progress in devotional life, with practicing devotional life and Bhakti Yoga, practicing hearing and chanting, then all that knowledge is revealed. And then when it's revealed, then we can check with what we are hearing. Yeah. If what is revealed is bona fide, or if it's just a creation of my mind. Right. Well, that's more like that. It's not like I need to know those things. We don't need to know them. Like if we go into like I was thinking when you were reading that Srila Prabhupada gave us the nectar of devotion. Yeah. And all those topics from the Sandarbhas, they are right there too. Yeah. Yeah. And in nectar of devotion, there is so many rules and regulations of Archana, of deity worship. So many long lists of offenses, like so many things there in the nectar of devotion. And we want to hear them and hear them and hear them again. And allow our life to be stirred in the right direction. Yes. And then get the realization and the knowledge being revealed by the Lord and by the Parampara, as we need to know for guiding us where we need to land.
Yeah, like in the Vedic philosophical traditions, the different schools are called darshans, Vedanta darshan. So darshan isn't just, it's not like learning, but darshan actually means to have like intuitive, direct, experiential experience of the absolute. And so that's the essence. And then from there, you know, all the nuances are revealed according to what needs to be revealed, you know, according to you know, the soul's inspiration with Krishna. So so book knowledge is not required. At the same time, an integral part of our process of bhakti is to study Prabhupada's books.
And then I have one more comment about deity worship.
Yes.
Last night I was listening to a class and Srila Prabhupada was describing how Krishna has all the power and he doesn't need anything from us.
Yeah.
And he comes in the form of a deity to receive service from us and to make himself helpless. I cannot even dress myself. I cannot even feed myself. Help me, help me. And it's not that the Lord is helpless, but he makes himself helpless to develop a relationship with us to the deity.
Beautiful.
Is that beautiful?
Yeah, beautiful. Ladini put a heart in response to what you just said.
I think it's in the class. We only get one class on the first campus. At least one. There is only one recording of classes of Srila Prabhupada on the online.
Anandini.
Hare Krishna. I'm not going to insist on hearing about Srimati Radharani. I do have another question.
Yeah.
More practical question. So Jiva Gosvami, like he wrote so many books on the order of Sri Chaitanya, what I understand. Like it was an instruction.
In the line, okay. In the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Jiva Goswami, I think he did not personally associate with Lord Chaitanya, but his father and uncles had a lot of association with Lord Chaitanya, and so Jiva Goswami says like two generations from Lord Chaitanya, and so so from the instructions of Rupa and Sanatan, Jiva Goswami wrote lots of books. He revealed lots of books.
So books. My question is about books, about writing books. So, like, Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote many books, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and also Srila Prabhupada, and all his mission was around books. So my question is, it seems like everything has been said, and still are we encouraged to write books too? And if so, what kind of books? Could you speak a bit about this?
Okay. Thank you, Anandini. As Brahmapara wrote, there is only one class Srila Prabhupada gave on what? It was difficult to hear, Melanie. Fourth canto of Bhagavatam. There's only one recorded lecture from Srila Prabhupada, fourth canto. So much, I think there are some cantos, there are 0 lectures. There are some chapters of Bhagavad Gita, like chapter 17. I don't know of any recorded lectures. Yes. So Srila Prabhupada wanted his followers to write, including writing books. Prabhupada wanted his followers to write, including writing and publishing books. Definitely, 100% yes. That doesn't necessarily mean that for every disciple of Prabhupada, it's their service to write books. But if someone says like, we have what Prabhupada gave, so we shouldn't write more books, that's wrong. No, that's a wrong conception. Prabhupada wanted his followers to write, to journal, to write books, because Prabhupada wanted his followers, and the acharyas want the followers of Lord Chaitanya to be leaders in all fields of society, all fields of human endeavor. Idam hi pumpas tapsashutasya sutasya siktasya chabudutaya. In all fields, science, art, education, sociology, psychology, transformation, communication, physics, like that. So Prabhupada wants to take, so in our writing, we want to be very conservative, conserve the principles given to us by Prabhupada, which he's faithfully, authentically giving from his spiritual master on up to Krishna, Jiva Gosvami, and to be bold, creative, and innovative, how to communicate those principles, such that people in different sectors of people will hear and will be open to receive and will be open to Prabhupada's books. So it's not like, yes, let's write books instead of Prabhupada's books. Prabhupada's are current link to the Parampara. So anything I do, anything I write, I want it to inspire people to come and directly hear from Prabhupada, so that Prabhupada's the main Vaishnava giving them transcendental knowledge. So Prabhupada wants his followers to be leaders in all fields of human endeavor, all respectable fields, like maybe not butchery or something like that, but all respectable fields, right? So, animal training, education, psychology, transformational seminars, coach training. So the idea is we want to integrate all of that in Krishna consciousness and more than that, not just integrate it, but to show that anything valid in all of these fields, anything valid and truly useful, finds its origin and completion in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. And a way to show that is to write books. A way to show that is to write books to communicate our personal realization, not speculation, not concoction, our personal distinctive realization of the eternal universal principles given to us by Prabhupada from Bhagavatam, from Chaitanya Charitamrita, to communicate in a way that will connect with certain sectors of people where they're at, to bring them to the process of bhakti that Prabhupada gave, with Prabhupada as their current link. I appreciate the question.
Thank you for your response.
Yeah, Prabhupada wants us to write books, for sure. Books based on his teachings, not changing, not deviating. Okay, right. So I know, well, some of you have heard me tell various stories. I know in 2015, when Ladini Shakti got back to Czech Republic, she wrote a book in Czech in her field of horse training. In my understanding, it was essentially Bhagavad Gita for horse trainers, including Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So this is an example. Some of you heard me tell the story. It was the summer of 95, and I was taking a community organizing course towards my graduate degrees in social work, and the professor was Professor Jerry O'Connor, political advocacy, community organizing. It's really not my thing, but I needed to take a course to get that degree. And so in the papers, I would, in social service terminology, I would integrate and incorporate all of Prabhupada's teachings in social service terminology. So there was like one group that had the night class at 6 o'clock and one group that had the night class at like 7:30. So I was in the 7:30 class. It was Florida State course offered on the University of Florida campus. So Jerry O'Connor, he was already in his 60s at that time, in 2005. So the first class comes out, and I'm waiting there to go in, got my books and all, and they look at me kind of like on reverence, and they go, no, Jerry O'Connor talked to. And then to our class, Jerry O'Connor, he said, it was very embarrassing. He said, "You have a genius here," and he was talking. It was very embarrassing. I turned red, and he said that in his 35 years of being a professor, he's never seen a paper as brilliant as this. But because the Bhagavatam talks about politics, Bhagavatam talks about community organizing, Bhagavatam talks about social service. And so what I wrote was brilliant. Not that I'm brilliant, but I was giving him Bhagavatam, and in the thousands and thousands of papers that he had to read over 35 years, like, so this one it was just like shining out. And he talked to me afterward, And then as a result of that, and I was doing that in all my classes, and the professors were like, this is like coming from a different place, you know? And it was. And then it was way outside of the box, like can't even find the box anymore. And then they got the dean of the whole school and the university, and they got together and they said we want you to do a PhD, and we'll pay you money. And they gave me the top university. Actually, essentially I got like $50,000-$60,000. And they told me, like, whatever you're given, like, don't order it down, just give it to us direct. And that became, I said, you sure? So then that became like the Vedic personality inventory, the Mahamantra studies. And so you know, I got some good profit out of that. But yeah, so basically I did writing, and it was all based on Prabhupada's teachings, and it was transformational. It impacted them like that. Hare Krishna. Malini.
I have two questions about the concept of the purpose. So I will ask one of them actually.
Okay.
Towards the end of purpose, I would express how like the last Sandarbhas.
Pretty Sandarbha.
Pretty Sandarbhas, but now the imitation of the feeling of bhakti
Yeah.
is as good as, you know, like
Yeah.
the real thing.
Sure.
And Srila Prabhupada also like heavy awareness against doing that.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
Because it becomes like sahaja and
Yeah.
cheap imitation and almost materialism and impersonalism.
Yeah.
So how do we bring the two together?
How do we reconcile that?
Reconcile that.
Did you hear Malini's question on internet? Okay.
I didn't.
Okay, I'll repeat it. All right. Ladini wrote, Krishna pays well for his marketing. Yes, I was marketing Krishna. Still yeah. Or same, and then the whole dissertation, like the Association for Coach Training Organizations, International, they invited Safatov to give a presentation, a keynote workshop at their annual international conference in 2017. It was Toronto. It was in Toronto. We entitled Mantra Meditation and Transformative Coaching, because they accepted the Safatov School of Coaching. It's like on the cutting edge of spiritual life. So we taught them how to chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra and how to teach it to their students, all based on, we did some writing, the dissertation, to spread Lord Chaitanya's movement. So the word Prabhupada uses is, there is also a discussion of how spiritual feelings can be present when one simply imitates them. So he doesn't say it's as good as the real thing, but they can't, but there's value there. And he says that in other places, like this whole Sahajya thing, like Prabhupada will often, you know, expose the hypocrisy that they'll pretend they're in the far Radha and Krishna, then afterwards they'll be smoking a cigarette or smoking marijuana, like that, like, you know, like, where's your loving ecstasy for God? If it's, you know, basically about sex and drugs and things like that. But Prabhupada will sometimes say that even in the Sahajya, there is some Krishna consciousness. They are chanting some names of God. So Prabhupada warns us against it. Don't be a faker, don't be a pretender. But if in our pretending, and we have all sorts of other maybe seedy, shadow motives, hypocritical, deceptive motives. But even in that, okay, but we're doing some chanting, and there could be some spiritual emotion that's very real, some drop of spiritual emotion, like kind of like Krishna saying, like, okay, you're just kind of like a pretender and you're hypocritical and all that, but in some way you're trying to chant my name and Lord Chaitanya's name. Okay, all right. So even in the pretending, there can be some drops of real emotion that maybe in a few lifetimes will lead to meeting a bona fide spiritual master like that. That's my understanding.
Can you read what he said for me?
Sure. There is also a discussion of how spiritual feelings can be present when one simply imitates them.
So if we want to Like the way I understand it is that if we want to
I think they're not going to
arouse,
hear you.
if we want to arouse those feelings, we can imitate them and then they will arouse. And that's the way.
That's what you say.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't see that Prabhupada's encouraging imitation, but he's saying if we do imitate, then they can be aroused. Yeah. He's not encouraging that that's how we should do it. That's not what Jiva Goswami is saying. Not encouraging, but if we do happen to imitate, maybe because we want people to think we're highly spiritual and highly devotional, if we do imitate, that can lead to the real thing. The shadow can lead to the real thing. But Jiva Goswami and Prabhupada, they're not necessarily encouraging imitation. Hare Krishna. Other comments or questions?
Like when Prabhupada said, Prabhupada, I don't feel anything when I go down. Said, go down and feel.
Oh,
So
yeah.
maybe it's the same thing, like practicing, like let's say, chanting with feelings, practicing, meditating, like
Yeah.
practicing those internet states of being, even so we may not feel, we know what's loving emotion are, we know what's, so practicing that kind of in an imitation way, because we don't have the love, we don't have affection, we don't have, but still we know what it is to feel affection or what it is to feel love. And so if we take that and offer it to Krishna in imitation to someone who may have love.
Yeah, I mean,
And
we probably
it seems to be the same than bow down then feel. It's like, okay, I imitate those feelings and maybe one day they will become more and more real.
I mean, to get the nuances, we probably need to go deeper into the Priti Sandarbha. I mean, oftentimes when Prabhupada uses imitation, he's referring to the Sahajiyas, which is what we reference. Then first bow down, then you feel. Maybe that's what Prabhupada and Jiva Goswami are referring to here. I think first bow down, then you feel. That's more like genuine practice of sadhana bhakti will lead to the real raganuga bhakti feelings, like genuine practice of sadhana. But maybe that's what was referred to here by the word imitation. I saw Parampara and Anandini had their hands up. So either one of you can.
Okay, yeah, I see Anandini has her hand, but I'll jump in. Just a practical note, it does seem like it doesn't matter the volume of the speaker whenever they're behind the video, it just goes in and out. So it doesn't seem to be like just speak louder. It seems to be like the video needs to be facing. Anyway, just feedback about that. But Jiva Goswami's disappearance day, and I feel like I do have questions, and then I kind of know your responses to them, or I kind of know the responses to them. I still think I think I'll just share. I just like to share a little bit about, I guess, my experience with the Goswamis and Jiva Goswami, and especially lately, and that I feel like it's all been happening kind of around the same time that I was doing this men's reading group, The Nectar of Devotion by Rupa Goswami. So that's very advanced, topics are touched in there, and it's like the Goswamis. And then also just encountering things online with other, with devotees and other devotee communities, and that aren't following Prabhupada, finding things online like that. And then in our community, having discussions about Sahajiya. And so it's kind of like all happening at the same time. And in Jiva Goswami, and I've, encountered, topics on the fall of the Jiva Tattva, the origin of the Jiva, and all these kind of things. And so in that, I've had this kind of, I've had an experience inside of like maybe being afraid of the Goswamis, you know, kind of like, oh, well, this is, or even having feelings like, oh, well, because it seems that if you go to read Jiva Goswami's writings directly and not through Prabhupada, then you may come, somebody may come to a different conclusion than if we do through Prabhupada. And so like, oh, so that kind of, so it's been a conflict for me of like, well, maybe fearing the Goswamis or having conflicted feelings about the Goswamis and things like that. And so there's that part that's like, oh, it's I'm attracted to that, those that kind of thing. Oh, something different, something like that. But then like probably, feeling protected, feeling safe through Srila Prabhupada. And so where I've kind of come and landed and I've just like, I'm just really relishing this nectar of devotion reading, and and also like today I'm thinking about Jiva Goswami, and I'm feeling like, yeah, I'm really because Prabhupada says Jiva Goswami is like the greatest scholar, the greatest Vedic scholar,
The greatest philosopher on the planet.
The greatest philosopher on the planet. And so it's like, yeah, we do want to learn about Jiva Goswami and know about Jiva Goswami and hear from and associate with Jiva Goswami. And then so I feel just more grounded and more enlivened and alive in the realization that Prabhupada gave everything, and maybe it's hard to take that technically, because so he didn't translate the Sandarbhas or whatever, like maybe he would have, but so it's like it's hard to not take that technically of like, well, he didn't necessarily give us everything, but he gave us everything that we needed, and all the essence and the topics are all there. So that's kind of been my process. And so I'm appreciating this Disappears Day Jiva Goswami to like increase my desire to like associate with Jiva Goswami through like Chaitanya Charitamrita or other writings from Srila Prabhupada.
I appreciate what you've shared and your conclusions. So my recommendation, based on what Prabhupada has given us, my recommendation is like read all of Srila Prabhupada's books at least 3 times, at least the 54 major books at least 3 times. And then consider, because the idea is if we go somewhere else, then we want to receive it and process it through the pure lenses of Srila Prabhupada. So Jiva Goswami is pure, but Jiva Goswami is not directly talking to us. Yeah, Prabhupada gave us everything we need to know about not just to know, to realize about the Sandarbhas. So just like today, through Srila Prabhupada, we're enhancing our direct relationship with Srila Jiva Goswami. So no reason to fear the Goswamis. We can cultivate our affection for them by going through Srila Prabhupada. So I recommend reading all of Srila Prabhupada's major books, 54 major books, at least 3 times before considering going to books of other acharyas, except for Brahma Samhita by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, which Srila Prabhupada did directly give us. Just as one example from the purport we just read. Prabhupada mentions Sridhar Swami, who's he's like the grandfather commentator on the Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada mentions how Jiva Goswami references Sridhar. So Jiva Goswami's Sandarbhas are based on Sridhar Swami's teachings. Now I can tell you, not that I've directly read books by Sridhar Swami, but I know enough from what I've heard. Sridhar Swami, you can go to parts of his commentaries and it sounds Mayavadi. It sounds complete Mayavadi. That's what it sounds. And we go, oh, so Sridhar Swami has a completely different view on the 4th canto than Prabhupada. Right. So what was happening when Sridhar Swami wrote, I don't know, maybe it was 900 years ago, something like that. to a large extent, he was speaking to staunch impersonalists and Mayavadis, and he was endeavoring to meet them where they're at and bring them to appreciate the Bhagavatam. So a lot of his teachings are that. So what we get from Jiva Goswami Prabhupada, it's not the quote Mayavadi aspects of Sridhar Swami. And even if we read Sridhar Swami, he's influenced by, no, he was a pure devotee, but he had a particular mission. He's not speaking directly to us, just as one example.
But just would you say that also for Jiva Goswami, that he was speaking to an audience, and was his audience more impersonal, Mayavadi, would you say?
Yes, to a large extent, his audience was like Vedic Brahmins. Yes, his audience was those who were influenced by Shankaracharya. Also, his audience was a lot of Vaishnavas who didn't quite realize the place of Lord Chaitanya, didn't quite have an Achintya Veda Tattva realization. Vaishnavas who had some partial understanding of the Vedas, they didn't quite appreciate the place of Bhagavatam. So he's also talking to Vaishnavas to give them a more complete and solid philosophical understanding, the role of the Bhagavatam, like that. Malini.
I just wanted to share that, okay, if I read all Prabhupada's books 3 times, still none of the Goswami have written in English.
Right.
And most of us, we don't speak either Sanskrit or Bengali.
Right.
So that means we are going to read those books translated by someone else.
Yeah.
And Srila Prabhupada, often when he speaks about the Bhagavad Gita, he said there were so many Bhagavad Gita before he came that were also translated in English.
Yeah.
So many Bhagavad Gita, like 500 or something like that. So in a sense, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Like we are facing not simply like, okay, reading the Goswami's book, but whoever translated it, that's the person we are going to read from.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important in that discussion.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Melanie. Anandini wrote, or we learn Bengali, right? Yeah. So, right. So apart from being very firm and solid in Prabhupada's Siddhanta means the conclusive teachings, then there's the whole translation question. Yeah. And so that's there because not just translation, commentary. Are we getting commentary? Are we getting commentary from someone who asserts that Prabhupada's not available to be the current link in different philosophical determinations? So these are important considerations.
Yeah, we need to learn Bengali. Prabhupada said, with Bhaktivinoda Thakur,
Yeah.
Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that.
He said people from all over the world will learn Bengali to read Chaitanya Charitamrita. And Anandini wrote, yes, I just read that yesterday. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki. Srila Jiva Goswami ki. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.